kudos to you of how much can you say in 150 characters.
I love the challenge. It's one of my favorite pieces.
That is really a challenge for many students.
Now, Michael, I think one of the most underrated aspects of the application is the activities. Mm-hmm. I think there's an art to this, a science and art, an art and a science to this. And here's the thing, there's space for 10 activities. Fill in 10 activities. If you don't have 10 activities, okay, that's a conversation, but you really want to put in 10 activities if you can. And
Chris, the only caution I would say is in this year, because of what happened, there may have been activities that kids would have done or could have been able to do that they weren't able to do as well too. So I think that, yes, if you can get 10, that's great, but at what point are you stretching to get 10? But I'll have a kid put in babysitting, for example. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay.
Absolutely.
There'll be things that you don't think about. Oh, I would never put that in there. Oh, yes, that would be something that you would put in there.
So along those lines, if there's 10 spaces, I always recommend to people that the first 3 entries really set the tone for the activities list and really want to, if not introduce, reinforce really what your major themes are. So how could you go about doing that? Probably your most impressive, and I'll say, and meaningful accomplishment first, okay? Just because you, did a day at NASA doesn't mean it was also the most meaningful for you. It could be the most meaningful for you, right? But, what have you done over the long haul that's mattered to you that much, right? So you're looking at that, number one, and then your second, your third most, impressive or meaningful. And what I've done here is I've just sort of modeled for you what it might look like for you to put in an activity that takes the entire year. There are 52 weeks in a year, and you're going to have the option of of listing the number of weeks as well as the hours per week in your application. If you're doing a full year, I often recommend that you're doing 50 weeks because you got to probably take at least 2 weeks off. Now, of course, there are exceptions, but 50 weeks feels like a full year of work. A full school year of work, school years are usually about 40 weeks, but usually 36 weeks is probably closer to the truth because you're taking finals, you're taking midterms. So, and then the way that the activities get organized, there's career-oriented, there's academic, there's community service, there's a whole litany, okay? And you'll see here, I'll get into some more detail with that. So you have your first 3, right? There's always 150 characters to describe it. You want to probably do your best to use all 150 characters. This is not really a time to get into detail, nuance, to do about metrics, right? And numbers. You want to save nuance and detail and background for your essays. So you have your first 3, and then through the middle, I call it the middle of the body. These are what I call like the more like standard activities, okay? So like your athletics, maybe you're doing robotics, you're debating your speech, right? Again, these are kind of like probably things you're doing in school, and then when you get to the last bit, the last 3 is what I call, maybe like the last 2, depending on what your resume looks like. I call it like the accent pieces. Here, kind of showing some flair, showing something kind of cool, something kind of different. It might be like skateboarding. It might be something, that you play in a rock band or something like that. It might be a summer job where, like Michael was saying, maybe you're a babysitter, maybe you're a caretaker for a family member. That goes into the activity as well. That's a significant activity. And then the last thing I'll say here before Michael provides us with his insights is if you have more than, 10 activities and you're able to kind of group them in themes, that's another way of using the activities list to express everything about you. So for example, I modeled it right here. I have summer work experience, an internship in the finance sector. Maybe you were a shadow at Goldman Sachs in the M&A department for 3 weeks in 2020. Maybe you were a data analyst in the credit department at TD Bank for a week in 2019. And maybe you were a sales intern in the wealth management group at Morgan Stanley. Obviously, this is a very specific sector of the world and of the professional workforce, but it's just, an example of how instead of listing things individually, you can sometimes group them if necessary. Michael, thoughts, input?
What's interesting to me on the internship piece you have there, kudos to you of how much can you say in 150 characters?
I love the challenge. It's one of my favorite pieces.
That is really a challenge for many students. They want to write all about what they have done, et cetera, and all of a sudden they get like 3 lines into it and they got cut off. So you need to think about how you can express it in a very quality way. One of the examples I would use, though, to go back up towards the top in terms of these activities, is you might also want to think in how does it fit into your story? For example, a student who's applying to Tulane. Tulane cares so much about community service. Ever since Katrina, but even before Katrina, the whole concept of what have you done to help others? And to me, at a Tulane, I make community service my #1 activity. So you might want to think about perhaps what's going to resonate well with the college. Tulane has scholarships for students based on their community service record. So you want to think about when you're applying to particular schools, what might resonate a little bit more. For the kid who's an athlete, I don't think there's anything wrong if athletics is a little bit higher on this list than some other things, because the reality is the admissions office probably knows this is a recruited student athlete who's going to get support from the coach, and for the kid to not make it one of his most important activities when perhaps being so involved in sports has limited him to not be able to have 7, 8, 9, and 10, then you kind of want to have athletics that high on the list too. So it's going to vary from student to student in terms of how they do this. You want to talk through with somebody what makes sense in terms of the order of how I put them in.
And I'll just simply add that when we have somebody who has a full year activity, for 4 years, for 50 or 52 weeks, usually it is an athlete.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Someone who might be an Olympic track, right? Or who's, like you said, like a heavily recruited athlete, that is their most impressive and meaningful accomplishment.
Exactly. Yeah. And the college.
So again, go ahead.
Yeah. The college is going to know that because that kid is going to be on the coach's radar and the coach is knocking on the door of the admissions office about him. So, yes.
Right. And so just to clarify, and I appreciate Michael's point, is that, I'm choosing these activity categories just as an example, right? Just as an example. This is just to illustrate, what it could look like for somebody. But again, it's a personal, it's going to be done per your personal strengths, as well as, like to Michael's point, maybe what the school's looking for.